Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happenstance in this wonderful dialogue with the team that will hopefully break through to millions of you to get truth to the disaster that we're all in the midst of, that never ceases to relent. And this week is no exception. We're recording this on Friday, December 12th, approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And it is. Well, I'll just leave it at that for the moment because I am looking at really this grand panoply of a disaster on our hands that everybody's going to be a doorway to. But what I'm really intrigued about is a lot of stuff that has been coming out of mainstream media today that I think is going to set the table quite well for what we all have to sort of, I don't know, connect the dots, so to speak, is what we do consistently. But actually, I think this is what I was stalling on, and I do want to do a quick introduction. On your right panel now, right below me is Paul Peltier, the former prosecutor at the Department of Justice with decades of experience there, currently in private practice. He is also the adjunct professor at George Washington University. Immediately below him on my right is Eric Vaughn, the proprietor of Redpoint Digital, partner in truth that we've been developing for years that led us to this amazing group of people. So great to see you today, Eric. Of course, William K. Black, the former regulator, prosecutor, professor, expert in all things white-collar criminology and fraud and law, and of course, economics. Below him is his wife and colleague in truth and justice for all, June Carbone, the Rabina Chair of Science, Law, and Technology I should say Law, Science, and Technology at the University of Minnesota. And then off my screen, but he is here, and we'll bring him up in a moment, is Lewis Clark, the Executive Director of the Government Accountability Project, and a gateway to revelations that actually we're looking at right here on the front page of the New York Times. So for a quick introduction into today's sort of categories of discussion items, immediately I was drawn to, on the upper left-hand corner, Lewis especially, immigration agents are now using air passenger data for deportation effort. Certainly sounded like a lot of the information that you guys have been involved with as it related to Doge and I hate to say his name, but Big Balls. And of course, we were talking right before we hit record on how potentially this feeds the tech sort of oligopoly, especially as it relates to Palantir. Further in the headlines today, of course, we just saw that the National Trust sues Trump over the ballroom, which is interesting considering a lot of people are speculating that it's going to be a bunker. And moving forward, the fraudsters' victims are seething after Trump commuted his sentence. We'll discuss that. But what's on everybody's mind, of course, is House Democrats released the Epstein photos documenting ties to powerful men. And just quickly on that, I mean, it's not really news. I think we were all expecting that because of the initiatives of Rokakis and Rokana and Massey and, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene and so forth, that, there's been a big push on the Epstein files, which are supposed to be released on December 19th. And today, in anticipation of that, and I believe this came out of the Epstein, it was actually Democrats on the Oversight Committee, revealed pictures of a lot of folks that we've seen pictures of throughout the year. So it's not necessarily news, but it's good to underscore that we see, of course, Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton. We see Donald Trump there with a menagerie of young ladies. It looks like whose faces are blacked out. We see in this picture, it appears to be in the lower left, Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, and of course, Pam Bondi. And I was going to ask maybe Paul there, who might that be blacked out in that lower five? I mean, did that seem like somebody that you might recognize?
I'm not going to guess, but
I mean, it was amazing that was in the release, all things considered.
right.
But, further to that, based on all of your collective expertise, you probably were tracking on this, that fraudsters' victims are seething after Trump commuted his sentence. David Gentile spent just days in prison for his conviction in what prosecutors described as a $1.6 billion scheme that defrauded thousands of investors. And I read through this, and it was mostly, the normalcy of, seniors in their retirement funds that were completely gutted by this Ponzi scheme private equity guy. And of course, true to form, like we've seen the last several weeks, these pardon powers are just out of control. And that was interesting too, because in an opinion piece in the New York Times, guys, not only are guys that are drug dealers and people connected to Trump through, oligarchs and so forth, but we have in this particular case a representative, Henry Cuellar, a Texas Democrat. And this brought up some intriguing scenarios as it relates to Hakeem Jeffries as well. So I wanted to just kind of plant that seed first and foremost. Just a quick mention here that, of course, Alvin Holsley, the admiral who oversaw boat strikes off of Venezuela's coast, retires. Boy, that's a big surprise there. But I think we'll get things started really from the standpoint of this information sharing, this data breach, guys, that we just saw that could be used for spying, surveillance, and that sort of thing. And Bill, we were talking right before I hit record. You were mentioning how that might be playing out currently in Minnesota.
Yeah, so ICE just attacked a U.S. citizen on the grounds, which are obviously not grounds, legal grounds, that he looked like a Somali in terms of ancestry. And that was accurate. Of course, he was a U.S. citizen. They had no basis for thinking he wasn't a U.S. citizen. They attacked him physically. They put him in chokeholds. He said, I have a picture on my phone of my passport for precisely these kinds of moments and such. They wouldn't look at that. So what they kept on insisting was we want to scan your face and check it against databases, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to scan your fingerprints and do it. So this is all the Palantir effort. And the co-head of Palantir, which of course has become immensely wealthy and powerful as the great government contractor, particularly for all of these anti-law enforcement efforts by the federal government. They want to create the tools that will allow them essentially to be able to create a complete database on everybody and everything. You can imagine how valuable this will be to major corporations, but also to all advertisers and such. So they are currently under contract by the federal government, particularly with ICE type entities, to maximize this kind of database. What's interesting is all three of their efforts to scan failed. So you can see that the geniuses at Palantir are not geniuses. They get paid by us, the taxpayers, to fix their mistakes, to create databases that they can ultimately use to become extraordinarily wealthy and that Trump can use to attempt to sway elections and other such purposes. In the end, this is in the midst of a polar vortex in Minnesota, mind you. They drag this poor man. They got lost because they don't know where the hell they are in Minnesota repeatedly. They finally let him go miles from where they arrested him. And they refuse to return him and say, walk in Minnesota in like 10-degree weather with, wind chill of -10 miles and such. It's as if they were running a parody of evil, right? Like a cartoon evil, and all paid for by us.
Which is no laughing matter, right? And I always refer to that as the Mad Magazine, Mad King. And Paul, in that article that I just mentioned about the Democrats being in this sort of cloudy scenario on the pardon power side of this thing, these were prosecutors that wrote that. And apparently, the case that took down Cuellar, and also in the fraud case, by the way, the years in the information that accrued to be able to get those indictments, to get those convictions and everything that goes into it, only to have this president in this comic way, but that's not funny under any circumstances, provide pardons to these insane criminals. I wonder if you could put your thumbprint on this from your years of experience working in that system and what this means to you. You're on silent, Paul.
It's not just what it means to me. It's what it means to agents and prosecutors who work and spend a lot of their lives on these cases, right? For no benefit to themselves other than to do their job and do their public service. Look, it's no secret that this administration of Trump and the prior administration of Trump are all about the grift, 100% about the grift. I wrote op-eds in the last administration about the pardons he was giving to white-collar fraudsters. He pardoned an individual in Miami who perpetrated the largest healthcare fraud scheme, $1 billion, $1 billion. He pardoned a woman who ran the second largest healthcare fraud scheme in America, $500 million. He pardoned both of them, and he's just been carrying that on. This doesn't happen accidentally. There are reasons why these are the people getting pardoned. And I don't think we're going to find out during this administration what those reasons are, but I really hope that if we do get some Democrats in power, that they start investigating these pardons, because it is clear to me that this is just a large pay-to-play scheme, and people are getting rich over these pardons. Absolutely, positively. There's no other reason for it. When Trump was asked, why did you pardon CZ? He said, who is that? So at the end of the day, he knows damn well who he is. And there's no doubt in my mind that it is all about corruption. But the thing, not only is it demoralizing to the agents and prosecutors who spend large portions of their lives unwinding and investigating and prosecuting these cases, which are very difficult. The case in Miami, which was the largest healthcare fraud scheme ever, which involved hospitals and nursing homes. We started that case 20 years ago, and literally it took 20 years to get to the top. The good thing was they kept, from a prosecutor perspective, they never really stopped their bilking of Medicare. But it was $1 billion, and taxpayers are never going to see that money again. And these are very wealthy people. But when he pardons them, their entire liability to the United States goes away. Similarly, the victims of these Ponzi schemes or fraud schemes, particularly in the Gentile case and the CZ case, all of those victims now no longer can get paid back through the United States government enforcing restitution and or forfeiture. So when he pardons them, it's a freebie. Now, these guys remain very wealthy. That's how they got the pardon in the first instance. So it is just a fraud on top of a fraud on top of a fraud. Mm-hmm. And it is really hard to reconcile any legitimate basis upon which you do it. And then you add to that pardoning the person who was the head of Honduras, who was the linchpin of a multi-hundred-ton conspiracy to bring cocaine into the United States, just shows the farce that Trump really is. It's awful.
Well, of course, targeting Venezuelan, supposedly narco boats, that and everything that goes with all things exat. But a quick follow-up question, because I know that you have interacted with Jason Leopold, and we talked several weeks ago about really what he's been doing over at Bloomberg by way of the FOIA request. And he had a piece out today, I don't know if you happen to catch it, Paul, that he went through fine-tooth detail about the FBI. And I think it was somewhere in the process of another 1,000 agents and 897 extra hours and $1 million and to basically redact information, and based on what he's revealing. But putting that side by side with that picture, I mean, we saw Pam Bondi in one of the pictures today when she looked like she was in her 20s, and maybe she was a little bit older, but it looks like it might have been on the Leader Express. I mean, talking about satire beyond our wildest imagination, but this is real. And just before we move on, I mean, you got to, I mean, that's insane when you.
Well, I think that the story is sort of the corruptive influence that they're having on the Department of Justice and the FBI, right? So what we see is them misusing the FBI, right? We have the head of the FBI, Kash Patel, using his and his girlfriend's protectors to help protect the drunk girlfriends of his. And it's, they talk about the deep state, but what we really see now is what they're doing to the agencies. I don't know if you saw this, but I think yesterday or the day before, a career FBI agent testified under oath before Congress that the principal domestic terror organization is Antifa. There couldn't be anything more bullshit than that. That is nonsensical. He couldn't even answer questions about where it's headquartered, who its principal officer were, because it's nonsense. It's made up. It's fake. So, but he's a career public servant FBI agent, and he's testifying under oath to this nonsense. This is what's happening to the FBI, and this is what's happening to the DOJ. And I just, it's got to stop, but it's not going to stop for another 3 years, and it's frightening.
Yeah, and on top of that, we're seeing mega mergers and acquisitions from billionaires that are also playing ball with Middle Eastern countries that have been involved with all sorts of craziness. And turning this to you, Louis, just I was so astounded by that headline on the New York Times, given our ongoing discussions. I mean, we're talking about data breaches, right? Used for this really menacing deep state, fascist. I mean, we know who Peter Thiel is. And we also know that Peter Thiel got assistance a couple of years ago because of what was happening at Silicon Valley Bank. But the Government Accountability Project, it cannot be understated how valuable the information is that you have, and being able to bring that to light, the high level whistleblowers within all of these different agencies that have the information, that have got to get to legitimate journalists to be able to get this information out to the public themselves. And, we touched upon ICE, and we know that there has got to be some really scary stuff happening in with these agencies if you reveal what they're doing. I wonder if you can maybe give your sort of insight and clarity about what's going on here and how difficult it is going to be to bring these stories to light.
Well, I think in this atmosphere, it's difficult because there's so many threats that we have never experienced before in terms of whistleblowers. I mean, it used to be we would need to warn the whistleblower that they might lose their job, or they might get suspended for a couple of weeks or something. Now it's like, well, you might lose your job. You might lose your career. You might lose your bar license. You might lose your freedom in terms of criminal prosecution. And you might get death threats you get pizzas delivered at 2 a.m, just so that someone out there, or whoever it might be, wants you to know that they know your address and where you live and where your family lives. I mean, that's really what we have to tell people. And it's new territory for us. And what's amazing is that there are so many people who say, I know all that, and I'm still willing to come forward. And that's what's going to save us, if anything does. It's going to be that kind of courage. And it's going to be then the courage to the people who support those people, because they will also be under the same threats. It'll take the courage of the judges, who we now are hearing as well, who are under the kinds of threats when they rule in favor of whistleblowers or others, or just in terms of challenging a policy or challenging an activity or practice of the government, and then they become under huge threats. So but we are having to have that conversation with whistleblowers, and we are certainly gratified when they decide, well, I'm going to do it anyway, because I can do no other. And so the courage of these people is astounding. And one of the things that I guess the real test, I think, for our democracy is to what extent other institutions, other organizations, other people, other citizens are willing to stand up as well in support of these whistleblowers and in support of others who are victimized and who are being essentially ripped out of their normal lives and put into some kind of gulag. And also, I think, as we're seeing on a daily basis, as Bill just described, is it's not just the people, as we all very much know at this point, it's not just the immigrants, who have criminal records or criminal, have engaged in criminal activity. It's like anybody who is here without proper documentation, or people who are here and are fully, in compliance with the law, but all of a sudden we just, there's the decision to change the policy, to change the law by executive order, and then all of a sudden their whole lives are turned upside down, totally unexpectedly, without any rational reason in terms of what's good for this country.
June, I tend to like to start these dialogues with you to set the moral compass, but I wanted to have you clean up here today from this perspective. Not only had you had a prolific career at the Department of Justice, but your work with all of your colleagues has just actualized the impact on the family, right? How corporate destruction of this country and ownership that's led to this moment that you and Bill have been on the front lines of for now decades. And I remember having conversations with you about Jack Welch and that, and then we see, a couple of months later, we see Elon Musk in front of the world, basically, repeating what we saw, those folks do with the chainsaw cutting regulation. They didn't just automatically consider this out of the blue. They knew where they were coming from, right? They've known about this corporate structure, the stuff that you've been able to reveal through Walmart and other activities, that basically there's a micro targeted fraud on the family to make them completely vulnerable, while this incredible manifestation of corporate power has brought us to this point where we have a transactional criminal as president that's turned all of our institutions into weapons for that criminality. I mean, I don't think it ever surprised you, but doesn't it feel like, my God, what a moment for everybody to understand exactly how all of this stuff has come together?
Absolutely. I mean, when I listen to the parade of things you started with, my reaction, this is going on in lower key, less visible ways all the time anyway. That Epstein, the story has got to be as much about the financial dealings as the sex, that the two are intricately linked, that Trump is undoubtedly in bed with Epstein, figuratively, if not literally, with respect to all kinds of frauds that involve Russian money laundering at the very least. But when you then look at the systemization, first, data is money. When you look at things Doge did, and I think it's going to be a long time before we find out everything Elon Musk ordered, it's going to be about taking protected government data, giving it to private entities, and allowing them both to profit from it and to oppress us. So I want to mention just a couple of the things I've been looking into this week. I went to a conference by my colleagues, a webinar on AI and healthcare. Were they talking about how AI is making healthcare better? No. They said doctors are still in charge of that. Where AI is being used now is to decide insurance claims. And when you look at how AI is being used to decide insurance claims, there are two sides. One, the insurance companies, and United Healthcare came up. United Healthcare is the entity located in Minneapolis whose CEO was murdered, tragically murdered. But it's also number one in the country in the denial of claims. And what they use AI to do is they look at past practices in denying claims and say, how can we deny more? But then you look at the doctors, and the doctors in large health associations are evaluated in terms of how much money they're generating. And if they're not ordering enough of certain kinds of procedures, then there's pressure on them to order more. And what both of these stories have in common, and they move in the opposite direction. So if you train your AI on doctors' decision makings, you approve more. If you train your AI on health insurance rejection of claims, you approve less. And the AIs disagree about the same case, depending on which model is used to train them. Which means, note, AI is not an objective source of information. It is rather something that will exacerbate whatever the flaws are in the system to begin with when used for profit-making purposes. Now, these are not healthcare decisions, which leg to amputate. These are decisions about what to reimburse, but they then affect what you can get insurance coverage for. That's going on all over the place. It's going on all the time. When my father was dying, he had only a few months to live. They completely redid his dentures while he was in a nursing home. We couldn't figure out why. We now know that there's a whole system designed to increase dental care for people in nursing homes who may or may not benefit from it at all, given the state of their health. That's a profit-making enterprise. We know that doctors routinely benefit from ordering unnecessary procedures. I can tell you, during my soccer playing days in my 50s, I was hit in the head with a soccer ball. I had floaters. I went to the emergency room, who sent me to an ophthalmologist, who sent me to a retinal specialist. And the retinal specialist kept saying to me, you should come back every few months in case your retina detaches. There's no increased risk after several months of my retina detaching, but he had the coolest equipment ever. Look into the back of my eye, see all kinds of things with minimal, discomfort to me. Beautiful office and no patients. He needed more patients. So what you've got now is a whole system. First, it uses data. AI will hypercharge these practices. It uses the data to extract wealth from us. It's so much better if we're not actually paying out of pocket, because we would go broke quickly. But as long as the insurance companies are paying. Now you could say, okay, so the insurance companies fight back by denying more claims. But what this whole system is about is what I call bottom line reductionist measures used to extract wealth, with the ultimate person who is the subject of these efforts being reduced to a cipher. And you're seeing Trump just do this in Trumpian fashion. It's crass, it's not hidden, it's not subtle, and so we can point at it and say it's fraud. It's, pay for play. But when this is being done in a variety of ways throughout our economy, with a little more complexity and a little more subtlety, it's legal and almost impossible to prosecute.
Paul, did somebody want to chime in there for a second?
I just wanted to say that it's so funny. Well, it's not funny, but Trump is now saying, look, I don't want to pay insurance company. We can't, we're overpaying insurance companies. They're really making the case for a public health care system.
Yes.
It's the opposite of sort of what they want to do, but that's what they're really making the case for.
Great point. And further for the audience out there, I've had the great fortune of being on the receiving end of information from June Carbone through a whole variety of discussions that we're going to be revealing here relatively soon. But it's even more diabolical from a standpoint that we could take, for example, the way that the bonus culture works in Walmart is to completely extract and identify those that are vulnerable, to be able to create that methodology in the worst manners possible. I mean, making their lives miserable, more work, less pay, and it just, they're basically trapped. And I want to bring this back to you, Mark, because first of all, I apologize at the beginning. I didn't see your face when I did the introduction. So for the audience, Mark Dan is the former Attorney General of the state of Ohio. He's in private practice. But the way we were able to come to learn about who Mark Dan was he and his team did just the opposite of what we're hearing is happening during the Trump administration. They worked for the people to find out how things work that were hurting the most vulnerable people in our society. And Mark has been doing that ever since. In fact, better than I dare say what happened at the federal government then and now, because of what you were able to accomplish by getting in the details of racketeering of this methodology, but yet you know all about the corruption and the double dealing in Ohio. I'm sure you got plenty to work with here, Mark. I'm looking forward to seeing how you react to what is.
Well, I mean, what is the most? I mean, we talked about the prosecutors and the demoralization of those that do their job. Um, but we haven't talked about the consumers and the individuals that end up on the students who attended Trump University, the folks that are victims of some of these Ponzi schemes that have gone on for years, where their life savings, where they're now living, they're in a studio apartment instead of living in the house that they had saved for their retirement to live in. And as we've been talking about now for a decade, it's hard enough to prosecute these folks under ordinary circumstances. But when they literally the Trump administration treats the country as a monopoly board, where you can, if you land in the right spot, you can get the get out of jail free card. He's brought that to life. I mean, that was fantasy. That was and it wasn't. In fact, in the early 1900s, when the Monopoly game was invented, that wasn't fantasy. The Monopoly game was a social commentary. And here we've gone in 125 years, we've come full circle back to the place where the accumulation of wealth is rewarded at the expense of the exploitation. The winners of the game are those that do the best job of exploiting poor and working class people in this country, and you take away all the incentives not to do that. The risk of if the risk of prosecute, and we were the first to, this group of people were the first to criticize the Obama administration and the Clinton administration for their the deals they made with Wall Street to protect those guys that were their campaign contributors. But they would blush at what's going on here. And now not only can you operate with impunity, not only do you no longer have the CFPB looking over your shoulder, or the Federal Trade Commission, or the SEC. Everybody's disarmed, so you don't risk civil penalties. The odds of if you happen to be prosecuted, it's more likely because you were a contributor to an opponent of Trump, or you decided to publicly criticize, rather than because you committed a crime of moral turpitude, or committed fraud in this country. And even if you get convicted, Daddy's waiting around the corner with his hand out. I can get my hand in the screen for that bribe to sell you a pardon. I mean, I joked about or Randy Borowitz did in his column that the turkeys were saved this year. Didn't get pardoned this year because they didn't put up didn't buy enough cryptocurrency. From the Trump meme coins to get the pardon that they were entitled to. So they ended up on somebody's Thanksgiving table. It would be funny if it wasn't true. It is, and they do it in a way that is easily parodied. I mean, you forgot they also corrupted the United States Navy. I mean, look. I mean, I don't know what happened with the admiral and the guys floating on pieces of boat in the Caribbean. Okay, but we know they got killed, and they know they got killed by the federal government of the United States of America, and we know we're not at war with Venezuela, and we know that if we were at war with Venezuela, those would not have been combatants in that war. And yet a what appeared to be a perfectly normal, decorated admiral resigned today or yesterday because because he allowed himself to be compromised by these folks. It's a terrible choice, and Lewis, what you do is so important now because it's just such a horrible choice that government leaders have. And we literally, if we're going to hold anybody accountable, we have to create, because frankly, waiting for 2026 is not gonna fix it. It's not gonna return the executive branch to the control of people that give a shit, or that aren't there to enrich themselves or to enrich their patron. Um, so it's going to be 2028 at the earliest before these institutions can get wrested out of the control of this massive grift. And so we have to create outside institutions. We have to rely on organizations that support whistleblowers. The Democratic AGs banded together and hired Rohit Chopra, who left as the CFPB director, to create essentially a parallel consumer finance bureau, to go after those corporate criminals with far less tools and without the subpoena power or the ability to issue civil investigative demands and all the things that that are out there. But following Bill Black's admonitions, these state AGs said, okay, they're not doing it. Let's step in and do it, and let's step in and do it. So, how can we build and support I'm beyond trying to fix these guys, and you're beyond, and impeachment's not going to work in this political environment because of the makeup of the House and the Senate. So the only choice is to build alternative methods to do what we're doing, drawing attention to what these fraudsters are doing, to create, to make sure people get represented when they need to be represented, and to create alternative ways to hold accountable these criminals, because the government's collaborating with them. We are teeing up to sue the IRS and a couple other agencies over their Palantir contracts. I want to see those contracts. I want to know what it is that's going on there. So we're looking forward to that. We were unfortunately tied up this week trying to keep the government from lifting $1.5 billion from the Ohio unclaimed funds accounts of ordinary working class people whose money's been lost to a unpaid insurance policy or a bank account that they forgot about, to build sports stadiums for billionaires. So that was that took a lot of our attention this week. But we just have to fight, and we have to wage our own lawfare, and bring these folks to justice. I'm really excited about what the Democratic AGs are doing, and I'm really hopeful that the resources can be mobilized, because one individual AG's office just doesn't have the firepower, anywhere near the firepower that the CFPB had to do this civil enforcement work. And hopefully prosecutors, and I've talked to a couple of prosecutors, including the Hamilton County prosecutor earlier this week, about prosecutors, I think, need to start thinking about the same thing. How can they fill in the gap, local state prosecutors, that the Justice Department's leaving open? Because otherwise we're going to have chaos, and nobody's going to be able to trust the word of anybody. If you can't believe an advertisement on of a service, and there's no government to protect you, then we have to figure out how to help people protect themselves.
Mark, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So Minneapolis and St. Paul have issued orders and announcements not to cooperate with ICE. State police, local police, etc. What Bill described is illegal. I mean, we've seen police officers prosecuted for chokeholds, for stopping without probable cause, etc., etc. I must say my legal friends are referring to these stops as Kavanaugh stops after Justice Kavanaugh, because of a concurrence in which he said, oh, being racially profiled, no big deal. If you're not doing anything, they just let you go. Several days later, or in the middle of the cold in Minneapolis, miles from where you've been picked up, etc. Uh, but is there any hope of state AGs arresting ICE agents who don't identify themselves who commit illegal acts?
Well, most state AGs don't have that kind of criminal power. It's the county prosecutors and
Okay.
district attorneys around the country, and they're starting to talk about how to mobilize to do that. Um, it's the risky side of that is it plays into to Trump's political argument that that our cities are overrun with crime and the local prosecutors aren't doing what they need to do to protect them. But at the end of the day, if a crime is committed in your jurisdiction and you're the Hennepin County DA, I think it's your duty to investigate and to prosecute. And if people are being brutalized, if people are being detained without cause, that's let them argue their immunity. Let them. I mean, there will be big legal fights. But look, I mean, at the end of the day, if as Jim Comey told the Southern District of New York prosecutors, if you're not bringing cases that you lose, you're not doing your job. I mean, somebody's going to have to stick their neck out here and stretch. My mother, to this day, gives me giraffes because she gives me I have all these giraffe. I probably have one sitting around here somewhere. Giraffe statues because she said, the thing she is most proud of me for is that I'm always sticking my neck out. And that's what these prosecutors need to be giraffes. They need to start to lengthen their necks a little bit and stick their neck out in a time of constitutional crisis that's going on. And you know what? Let those grand juries decide. I think they're done with Letitia James, but who's to tell? Who's to tell? Maybe they'll just keep convening panels of grand jurors around the districts of the country until they find one of them that's willing to go along. But I mean, that system, is holding. I mean, it does. God bless it. God bless those ordinary citizens who are, who get summoned into grand jury service, who are actually bigger patriots. Think about this: than the president of the United States, than the U.S. attorney in the district where they're serving, or the attorney general of the United States. I mean, it's again, these institutions need to be sharpened. Everybody needs to understand that that's their role. If I were a grand juror in America, called to a federal grand jury, um, I'm not going to tell you what to do in there, but what I'm going to tell you is, you need to pay attention. Um, and you need to go in there willing to exercise your independent judgment. Maybe we need to do training sessions for potential grand jurors. I don't know. But I think a grand jury should decide whether that was a kidnapping crime that took place of somebody just because they looked Somali. In here, I'm a sophisticated guy with lots of resources, and I have 11 lawyers that work with me. But I still we went to Europe this summer, and I still haven't taken my passport card out of my wallet. And I should, because I'm one of those guys that tends to lose their wallet from time to time. So I probably should and put it someplace safe where I know I'm going to have it next time I want to travel. But you know what? I feel, and I'm as white as they come, and clearly I don't speak with an accent or a dialect, but you know what? Something keeps me from taking that card out of my wallet because at some point in the next 3 years, I'm concerned that my citizenship might be challenged, and I need to be able to prove on the spot that I'm not somebody that they should detain.
I hate to break it to you, Mark, but Midwestern people speak with an accent.
Yeah,
Right, I was gonna say.
there's that, of course, that Cleveland accent. But yeah,
So,
not so bad as Chicago.
True, true.
or Wisconsin. So
Yeah.
I'm going to direct this question to Bill, but I'm going to encourage everybody because this is so lively and so important, and there's just so much, but we're running out of time. To please free flow if you feel like it right after this. But I want to set you up, Bill, because I thought that Mark really hit some important parts. In addition to where the robber baron started. I mean, in his town, Cleveland, right? I mean, it was all things Rockefeller who gave us the vertical and the horizontal integration of all things Standard Oil that would lead to pretty much what we're back to, and which fits in with your no robber barons technique, in addition to no kings, right? And so, here we are, the final piece of this. Look, we see it every day. I mean, come on, to see Pam Bondi in those pictures, and she's the department, the Attorney General of the United States, and everything that's going on with the
Patrick,
FBI.
I'm ready.
I'm sorry.
I can go. Okay. All right. So first, since I represented them in a big Cleveland firm, it's the Standard Oil Company.
That's right. That's right.
Shortened to Ohio when I was representing them. But so look what you've already heard, and let's put it together with some of the things. Mark, of course, is joking about the get out of jail free because you have to pay to get out of jail under this administration. And CZ is not a random name when Paul was pulling it out, right? CZ is in business with the two Trump sons. And as soon as CZ joined, because he is vastly more sophisticated about these matters and has a far bigger criminal network, the value of their interest shot up like a rocket and such. So they get paid very handsomely. There have been scandals in pardons for forever, but they were limited historically, and they're almost always committed on the last day in office because they were embarrassing. We know, June and I, from counsel who actually did this stuff, that the first time around, the Trump administration still had some feeling of need for cover story and shame. So they asked other attorneys to bring a whole bunch of trivial marijuana offenses by blacks to get pardons at the same time to rinse the pardons that the son-in-law was arranging for prominent business folks. Now, because of his background, those happen to be Jews, right? But they felt that sense of need for cover. What we're learning now is they feel no need for cover. This, again, is free advertising for them. They want people to know they're corrupt. They want people to come to them with these kinds of deals. They have absolutely no ethical problem with corruption and fraud for predation against the most vulnerable people in America, even if that predation kills large numbers of Americans. None of that is a problem for them. So they want the world to know this, right? I mean, they wanted Cuellar to switch to being a Republican. And Cuellar started with a blast at the Justice Department. How dare they prosecute him? This is a man who was sewing the gold bars into clothing to hide it. You know, that little thing about knowledge of guilt and such. And to bring it together, the Palantir stuff, with what Lewis is talking about and what Lewis has done for these decades. There are now firms that specialize in outing whistleblowers who are not yet public. And in the case of Theranos, the big medical scam on blood testing, they went after and they nearly bankrupted the whistleblower, 400,000 plus in legal fees. Threatened to go after him criminally. threatened to bankrupt him and such. That is now the norm. Those firms that specialized were used by what at in decades past were considered some of the most progressive law firms in America on the side of the angels, who have now decided to go on that the money is better for the CEOs. They use intelligence techniques developed by bona fide government operations, in one case is Mossad, right? That are extremely proficient. These are the ability to take essentially a capture of your phone and everything on your phone without ever physically connecting with it. They don't need you to make a call to the wrong number. It is simply proximity, allegedly, that allows these things to happen. Notice also that Trump is ordering anybody coming to the United States to give 5 years of social media. This is everything to make the connections, to make Palantir and those that use Palantir and these kinds of firms not just extraordinarily wealthy, but extraordinarily ability to put together interrelationships. And so that, again, somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, that will be used to attack you. You are an associate of this evil person. We all know that that is coming down the roads. And they're going to send these agents, unless the judiciary holds, on election days into the voting precincts to intimidate voters. And they're going to use, what was that phrase, June? What kind of stop?
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh stop.
Kavanaugh stops as their excuse for going up to every person of color. That is what's coming down the road. But the good news, Mark just talked about those grand jurors voting no true bill, in other words, refusing to indict. If the New York Times data is correct, just in these three big-ish cases brought by the Trump administration as the most abusive, there have been more refusals this year, in fact, in the last 2.5 months, than all of last year for all causes in federal prosecutions. Think of that. That is extraordinary. There are reasons to hope, and the more we're able to get the whistleblowers in front of the public to explain exactly what's happening, the more this tide will change against these people who are trying to destroy America. Everything that was great about America is what they take aim at.
Louis, will you provide closing comments on that?
I think following up on that, I think it's important to realize that, for example, on the boat, I expect that a whistleblower is going to release the video of that person, those two men who were killed hanging onto a piece of boat.
Murder.
And I think that what's important and that's going to help shape American opinion. All these things, all these revelations are shaping American opinion. These devastating and very corrupt assaults on people on the street, this misuse of information, personal information on people, all that is beginning to register with the American people. And I think there's going to be a day, and I think that we need to let our neighbors know this, when our kids are going to be asking, what did we do during this period of time? Where were we at, and what fingers did we lift to resist, or did you just go along and live your life and allow this to happen? And I think that's going to come down the pike. And so I think it's not only is it in the interest of justice and democracy that people act, but I think in terms of people's personal legacy, it's important that people act.
Right. And to emphasize, obviously Lewis has been doing this since 1978, and he's never relented. But here we are, and it's probably the worst ever. And Paul, any final words from you, or are you good?
We have not only people who are doing nothing about this, what's going on. We have people that are actually subverting the truth. When you have Republican senators out there saying that these people were sunbathing or trying to reconstitute the vote and import. I mean, these are people that are recreating stories, made up stories. And so when the phrase that the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who in the times of great moral crisis do nothing, how about those who actively subvert the truth? I mean, it's got to even be hotter for them.
I'm pretty sure. Go ahead.
I was just going to say on that. I just
there
wanted
you are. I'm so sorry. I didn't even know you were there. I apologize.
He's been there the whole time.
Oh my God. I didn't see him on my screen. I'm so sorry, Eric. Go ahead.
Oh, it's quite all right. So as far as losing support, I think that one of the most recent polls that came out from a reputable source has Trump's approval rating down to 31%. Which I believe is good news. Now, the thing is that is going to put a premium on getting the message out, and the propaganda war is just going to be ratcheting up, which brings us to a bit of news that we haven't talked about yet, and that's media consolidation. And of course, there was Netflix who was looking to purchase Warner Brothers, and then more recently, Paramount came in with a much higher bid in order to take that over. Now, when we think about that, I mean, if Paramount were to make that purchase and the amount of entertainment and news sources that would be under the control of Larry Ellison, somebody who is very much firmly in the Trump MAGA camp, as well as Netanyahu and whoever else, we're looking at a propaganda machine staring us in the face. And I think that as long as, I mean, that threat is real. But boy, I do have more and more faith in the regular, everyday American people every day, because it's not as if this propaganda campaign isn't constantly going. It still is, and it seems to be losing its effect. We have to remember that MAGA was originally a creature of chat rooms and message boards and social media. And so this move for consolidation is something that's critically important for us to be keeping our eyes on. And, Trump basically, held out his hand when Netflix first announced their deal, right? It's like he said, well, I'm not so sure. I'm going to be in the middle of that one, which is basically him signaling, please give me my tribute, and then maybe I'll approve this merger. But then with Ellison coming through, especially with all of the negative press that Trump's been getting, and how his approval ratings continue to plummet, I can see why they would want Ellison to come in and take control of what would be one of the most mammoth media empires in the world.
Right. And I am so sorry I didn't see you on my screen, because I wanted to ask you that very question. I'm so happy you did. And I'll let you have the last word on this as well. But just picking up on that, though, let's also consider Barry Weiss and what her role is within the organization. What we've seen by way of, I don't know, I'm going to 60 minutes, whatever, we could talk forever. But David Ellison, right? He comes in this, we've got the force behind us here. You and I'm talking about on your wall, and you and I have had the great fortune to be, in league. Not we communicate with these guys who have been giants of our legal system for decades, that the country has got to come to understand are in the midst of trying every which way to possible to bring these cases of whistleblowers to the light to basically further what the American people are going to have to react to, other than what's happening in social media, right? And what's happening in all of this manipulation that's going down. Final words, Eric, in terms of what the communication side is, especially as it relates to documentaries and documentarians and truth.
Well, it's a tougher universe out there than ever to get documentaries that are like actually about substantive issues of society and finance and what have you. I mean, as difficult as it was, when we were trying to push the con out, I'd say that it's a much more challenging environment now than it ever has been, especially for long form getting out on some of the larger streamers and platforms that are out there, which makes media consolidation even more dangerous, right? So I think the only other thing is to say is that that's exactly why there's an importance for small media such as this, because this is where stuff is getting out. It's these shows, it's these places on YouTube, we're I'm sure we're flying a little bit under the radar still at this point, which is fine. At least we're getting the word out, in whatever way that we can, but what we're doing right now is as critical as it has ever been in the entire history of media, just because of consolidation and the fact that there are fewer and fewer places for people to hear substantive truths.
And that's the whole purpose of the force. And we're on the light side of the force. And on behalf of everyone who appeared today, and by the way, we do have big ears and big eyes watching us, and we're growing the audience, but we really could use your help out there. Please like, subscribe, and share. Please push this out there. It's the only way to break the algorithm and actually have the algorithm work for us. And on behalf of the New Untouchables, William K. Black, June Carbone, Lewis Clark, Paul Peltier, Mark Dan, Eric Vaughn, and myself, please check out thenewuntouchables.com. Please check out thecleannewdeal.org. And until next time, liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Take care.